Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of International Grapevine. This is your host, Warren Lee. Tonight on International Grapevine, we want to talk about the New York educational system in New York. We want to take an opportunity to talk about the school system and what have you, the pros and cons. New York system is one of the best one nationwide in the United States. Matter of fact, it is my understanding that the Empire State came eighth compared to the 50 states in terms of great education. So we want to take the opportunity today to talk about the educational system, the student, the school system, the teachers, and the pros and cons that are involved in the educational system in New York, which is somewhat complex, especially after there has been a change in leadership. So we take this opportunity to have one of our guests, who's a great guy that has been on the program many a time, and talking about our dear friend Jaime Estades, who happened to be a Adjunct Professor at Columbia University and also New York University. Jaime, welcome to our program.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Well, great. Well, we wanted to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the school system. Some of it is complex, some of it is not. Some of it is pros and cons that take place. In your opinion, how good are the New York school system?
How we doing now?
Yes. What do you think about the New York school system? Is it good? Is it great?
Well, it's supposed to be the largest system of public education in the United States compared to LA. Um you know, so it's a big educational empire, and it has had a good reputation for many years, for decades. So I think the only time that we had some issues, many issues, that in which the parents complained and the teachers complained was under Giuliani, who wanted to make some drastic changes, and especially under Bloomberg, Mayor Bloomberg. That's when they began decentralizing the schools and giving more power to charter schools. Charter schools were new, and basically they were a business, they were private. And during those 4 years when Bloomberg came, uh, there was a lot of protest by parents, especially in poor neighborhoods, uh, because they were used to a quality education in those neighborhoods, but then everything started changing without talking to the parents and explaining what was coming. So I think that that was a time of crisis in terms of how the administration was going to move forward with their plans without the support of parents. There were also another issue was the issue that during that time the gentrification in New York City began, and you had, especially in poor neighborhoods, you had jobbies and white young couples moving in, displacing parents and black and Latino parents and Asian parents, and they wanted to have their own educational system that they could influence and control, and they were working very closely with the Bloomberg administration. So that was a crisis. So I'm not going to get into that unless you ask me more questions about it. But besides that, the public education system in New York City has always been very sound and very productive in terms of making sure that the students graduate with a solid foundation to go to college if they wish to go to college or to do whatever else they want to do.
Well, I agree with most of what you said. The only thing that I found a little bit with Bloomberg, he was extremely tough on the teachers, extremely tough on the principals, and there was a lot of complaints at the beginning. I would say the first 6 or 7 months of when he took over, he was like a hammer on top of the teachers. A lot of people saw it as a good thing to be, but a lot of parents were not exactly thrilled about that. Do you remember anything about that?
Yes, I remember. I was a parent. My children went to public school when I was in Williamsburg and Brooklyn. That was a Latino neighborhood, and gentrification began. And exactly what I said before, I have to deal with these issues as a parent, as a Latino parent, and there was all these displacements and all these special classes um, in which uh, the students that were taking advantage of those new classes and programs were basically the children of gentrifiers, white gentrifiers. And uh, they didn't explain what they were doing. They thought that they could iron everything out without consulting with parents. And it's not that we were against it, we just didn't know what they were planning to do, and they were not consulting with us. They were consulting basically with the newcomers. Bloomberg didn't have that racial sensitivity. I think that he acquired it as he went through battles with black and brown and Asian communities. So we told him, we need to you need to consider us, and we need to be part of this discussion. So I remember one day we organized in Williamsburg. We organized in PA's 84, where my children were. We put 400 people from the community there in a
Wow.
meeting.
Wow.
We packed that place, and he panicked. And not only that, the gentrifiers panicked because they wanted basically to control the school for their children. And there was going to be separate classroom. It was a whole segregation thing. And we we needed to remind them, look, this is New York. This is not the South. Uh, uh, but after that, we got to an agreement. And what usually happens is that when white parents cannot get away with what they want, they leave. So many of them left, send their children to other schools, but they had moved. So they waited, and then the gentrification continued, and Williamsburg became all gentrified. Now it's a white neighborhood. There are no Latinos. I mean, there are few Latinos there, but it's mostly a white neighborhood. It wasn't like that, and they got what they wanted just by the economical power that they had to buy apartments and to raise the rents to people who live there, and because the landlords wanted people who could pay more.
Of
So
course.
education is, this is my point. My point is that education is not something that exists in a vacuum. There are a lot of forces around education that can shape the way education is provided, not only in terms of educational goals, but there are also housing goals that affect that education. There are also economic goals that affect that education in specific neighborhoods. So it's not something that is isolated. And I think that was a big lesson for Bloomberg, and a bad lesson for people of color, because it was not the educational system, it was the economic system, it was the gentrification that basically took over. And now you go to those schools where my daughters graduated from sixth grade, from elementary school, and you see barely students of color.
Wow. Amazing. Well, one of the things that popped up in my mind a little bit, and I can think about it, it started with Bloomberg, then he had it straight. The funding of school. Even today, under the new administration, there are rumors around that funding is a big necessity and it has not gotten into the school the way it's supposed to be done by the people who are running the educational system today. Do you have any note or idea about the funding issues and
I'm sorry, I
facing?
didn't get that. Can you repeat it again? I'm sorry. I have the air conditioner, right?
Yeah, well, there are certain issues that came up in the recent administration in terms of funding the school system. That has been a somewhat of a problem, and a lot of parents has gotten out there and started getting their voice heard that they feel that the funding system has not covered the school the way it's supposed to cover the school system. Are you familiar with any funding problem that the school system might be going through?
Uh, I know that those things always existed. The issue is mostly segregated, and I'm not talking about race. It happens in certain neighborhoods in which the need is greater and the funding doesn't match the needs. Uh, and there are in other places in which the funding are exactly what is needed. I don't know how intentional that is. It may not be intentional. I just think it's bad budgeting. I think that the communities that are more active, the school districts that are more active, in which the parents are more active, they tend to get more because they are basically putting pressure on the administration, the city administration and the state administration in education. And those communities that are not as aggressive as others tend to get less funding. So politics is all over, even in education. And I don't think that in terms of education, like in other countries, the issue of funding for public education is more sacred and more equitative. There's more equality in terms of how those funds are distributed. It can be either the same amount to many schools, or it can be proportionally. But whatever the yardstick that you use for that is fair. I think that there is a lot of improvisation is still in New York. There is a lot of still of politics is still in New York, regardless of race. And I think that there is an expression in Spanish: if you don't, if the baby doesn't cry, the baby doesn't eat. So communities need to start crying and screaming loudly so they can pay attention. That's a phenomenon of New York City, and maybe in other areas throughout the United States. So that will depend on those communities that are not, they don't have parents that are so active. That doesn't mean that they don't care, but that they are not organized as parents in order to make sure that they are supporting the teachers, supporting the school. That's extremely important because New York is very political. So if you don't have the parents who are the voters behind it, you're not going to get what others are getting.
Well, just like you, I had my kids in school in Brooklyn and also in Queens, and eventually I moved them to Long Island because I started seeing a little bit of change. I remember one parent saying something very important to me, saying, "But funding does not necessarily translate into great school. So the funding must be there. They cannot be shorting the money and moving the money somewhere else." And that cut back in the school system. It cut back in terms of productivity in the teachers, in the other people that are part of the education system that work with the children and stuff like that. So I kind of panicked and moved my kids into Long Island, and things were much better. But I remember the amount of problem and the collision when we talk about funding. One side of parents wanted it more funds into the system, and the other one said, don't worry about funding. Funding is important. You have to have money to run the school, the educational system, and what have you. So a good portion of what you said makes a whole lot of sense, and it brought me back into that type of memory of what I went through at that time when I moved my girls and out to Long Island, and the school out there was much better. And I still think the school system in New York is very good. One of the research that I did, I found that in the entire 50 states, New York is number 8. I'm a little surprised because I think the educational system in New York was always good. I thought that it was a little bit higher than being 8. Any feedback in terms of that, how great the educational system is in the Big Apple, and whether it's number 8 or it should be higher?
Well, it's the largest educational system in the United States. Is even let's say that everything being equal is still a headache. Is huge. We're talking about millions of children and adolescents from pre-K, kindergarten, elementary school, junior high school, in 5 different boroughs in a city of millions and millions of people. So it's a huge bureaucracy. That's where I give a break a little bit about New York. This is not easy to run.
No,
Uh, but if you have the money and you lobby for that money with parents, you can get more money because the parents, you know, who are you going to give money? You're going to give money to Scarsdale? Well, the people, everybody's a millionaire in Scarsdale, and they tend to send their children to private school. So you're not going to put that much money in Scarsdale. You shouldn't. Even when the public school in Scarsdale are great, but it's a small community of wealthy people. New York City, we're talking about 5 boroughs. Each borough is a city. Remember that. Those boroughs used to be cities, and we put them all together. So there is a lot of money to be distributed and to make sure that those monies are used. Okay, it also requires some money just to supervise and to make sure and to police the way those monies are coming. I mean, the budget is huge, but at the end of the day, I think the most important thing is that that money is distributed in a balanced uh, way. The UFT, the union, I think is very effective in protecting the rights of teachers, but they are also very good in making sure, and I have worked with them, in making sure that the students get a sound education. They're not only protecting the teachers, they want the teachers to do their job well, and they want the teachers to have the ammunition that they need to teach well. So, depending on how effective the UFT is in New York, which I'm not as aware as before, uh, that will represent uh, an influence in terms of the quality of teaching and the quality of learning and the quality of education in New York City. So you have all these different players uh, in terms of education in New York City that they have their interests, but it's something they have in common is usually the children. So I think that it's complex. It's complex, but if you have an administration that doesn't talk to the UFT, which happens a lot, and you have an administration that only talks to charter schools, which was another problem, in which people put additional monies from private sector, and still you call it public, you know, and those charter schools are for wide, wealthy neighborhoods, then you see there is a discrepancy. So there is so much that you
A
can
balance.
control. So anyway,
Let's talk a little bit about charter school, and then we'll come back into school system. What are your feelings and thought process of charter school? I remember when it just really truly got started. It took off like a bullet, and it was very good. What is the condition of charter school now? Is it up and
I, I
running?
I'm not aware that I'm not as aware as I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to be fair in my assessment. Uh, but when the charter schools began, I was in the firing line of all that. And what we said as parents was that we have already a system of education in New York City. If the system of education is sound, is
And
good,
solid.
and solid, we don't need charter schools. Charter schools was a business. It came as a business that it was going to get monies that usually go to public schools to charter schools from the government. So it was like a parallel educational system that was taking money from one to another, saying that they were better because they specialize in this and that. Uh, first grade is first grade, doesn't matter in what system you are, you know. The other thing is that not everybody was selected to go to charter schools, and the number of seats were shorter, were smaller.
Hmm.
And so there was a lot of preferential treatment, and that preferential treatment, I'm talking about the beginning,
Sure.
was basically for white parents, white students, as part of the process of gentrification. Then they won. Gentrification took over many communities, like I said in Williamsburg. So the charter school is another business to me. What we would like, you go to Europe, you don't have charter schools.
I know.
You have one educational system.
But
And
here's the thing about it.
anywhere in Europe, you go to Canada, it's one educational system. If
But
you
the
want
charter
to
school has
send,
survived.
yeah, but if you want to send your children to a private school, the private school exists. You send them to a private school. But that educational system, that public educational system, is sound and is there. And there is no competition between the private and the public. They keep them separate. If you have the money to send them to a private school, great. Send them to a private school. You believe in that system, send them there. But if you don't have the money, you have a sound public system of education. And then the charter school came as a way of taking advantage of the billions and billions of dollars that the Department of Education had, and they didn't know how to use, and they said, we can't resolve this problem. And now they're stuck with it. They may be effective, they may be not. I don't know what is the result of that, but my opinion is that if you need a secondary system of education, is because you are admitting that the current system is not good. And why is not good? Because then it's your responsibility.
Interesting. I never expected charter school to survive that long, and they have survived. There have been a couple of bumps here and there, but they have survived. They are not as popular as they were when they first started, which covered a great deal of the things that
But
you
the
mentioned.
prognosis was never that it was going to be great. We during those times we were saying, I, we don't buy this. We don't buy this. And to tell you the truth, it came at the same time as the gentrification began. It was an excuse to get the business of white parents who could pay more than black and brown students, because at the beginning it was almost privatized. It was, it was a whole scheme that it was created. And I'm not saying that there are some charter schools that are great, but that's not how they came. They came more as a business oriented type of education. Private. It's a private school. Call it private school. You can have a private school, but don't tell me that black and brown students and Asian who have no money can go there and can be as successful as the other kids. If they don't have the money to pay for all the materials that they have to pay for this and that, you know. And I think that they have been successful in
Yes,
some way, but not as it was advertised.
I agree with you. Let's bring up something that's going to be very interesting to you: teacher shortage and retention. How many positions remain unfilled and they are affected by underqualified individuals primarily running the system. We know teachers are always in demand most of the time. I think that some of them are underpaid. I think teachers are very important, extremely important for the education of our children. And what is your thought process when we talked about shortage and retention of teachers?
Well, it's like in any industry. You pay them well, you give them retirement, pensions, you give them all the needs that they have, they're going to stay there. If you don't do those things, if you don't treat them well as workers and respect them as workers, they're going to find something else
Other
to
means.
do. Yes. So it's as simple as that. If you don't give them the support, you can pay them well. But if the school is falling apart physically
Hmm.
and the resources that you need are not there, and a mile away there is another school that has everything that they have, they will try to go there. But you know what happened? They won't take them because the teachers that are there, they are not going to leave to open the space for a new teacher. So what usually happens is you don't treat them well, and the union fails them. If the union fails them, and sometimes the union cannot get everything that they want to get, so then that is going to affect the teachers. Remember,
And
the
they can move
teachers.
on, and they can move on to other places, another state.
Yeah, but it's all usually the same thing. Remember, teachers start at very early during the day. They finish around 3, and then after 3 they have meetings, or they have meetings early. Uh, so they put a whole day there doing a lot of things that have nothing to do with the day-to-day teaching. If they don't have resources, like if they want to do a project in the classroom and they don't have the resources to do the project, well, that's another thing that you are not able to do. Teachers, like any worker, they like to be satisfied. They want to be satisfied with the work that they do, but they need resources besides their salaries. They don't have to bring resources like many teachers that I saw when my children were in Williamsburg, bringing resources from their own homes, things, projects that they wanted to do. If the students didn't have a notebook or this and that, they bought notebooks for the children. If the books were broken, they tried to get. I saw teachers doing that, buying books because the books that were there were not in good condition, and they couldn't wait for the Department of Education to deliver the um, the the
People.
the means that they needed in order to teach the students. So even if you're getting a good salary, you decided to be a teacher because you care, you give a damn about children. And that's the main thing. That's why you decided to do that. You didn't become a teacher because you were planning to be wealthy. There is no one teacher that was planning to be rich and wealthy by being a teacher. They really wanted to do something that they care about, that they really wanted to do. And if that thing that they wanted to do, they cannot do it because of the lack of resources, and that is on the Department of Education. Or the Department of Education is sharing those resources with charter schools. Resources that they had, now they don't have them because they're giving it to charter schools, who most
Are there
likely
any,
can pay for them.
very well said, but are there any teachers shortage in the New York system?
I I think that they're I I think that that's a better question for the Department of Education. I don't have those statistics, and I want to be honest with you. I don't want
Okay.
to make something up. Um, but this is the biggest educational system in the United States.
Yes, it is.
Uh,
Yes, it is.
so there is a lot of people being hired. So I don't think that there is a shortage. What the shortage that exists is in good pay, good conditions, uh, and good benefits. I think that that's where the shortage is. And as long as they have that competition of charter schools, etc., there is less money because it's still public money, still the city paying for it, at least for a portion, a big portion of it. Uh,
It's also important
as
to
a,
know. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Also, it's important to note that the teachers have a union also that back
Yeah.
them when there are certain issues, because sometimes parents come up with poor issues because they don't take care of their children on one side and they blame the teachers. So the teachers them do have a union that can rescue them and go back and sit down and talk with them with a principle of what happened, what the child is saying versus what is reality. So it's always good to know that the teachers always had a union. Any thought process in that?
Oh well, like I have been saying all this time, the unions, the UFT in New York has a good reputation of being a good union. You know, for the teachers, and they negotiate, and they're very powerful. So I cannot tell you the status of the UFT now, but and I hope that is the same as before. But when I was engaged as a parent activist, the UFT was very, very strong. And it was basically the number one check on Bloomberg during those times. When Bloomberg came with his ideas and the charter schools and the gentrification and all that, the UFT basically put a fight on those things because even the teachers, because if you get gentrified, it's not only the students and all that. Then the teachers want to have white teachers, the new parents, and before you had teachers there that were teachers like for 10, 15, 20 years, and now they have to look behind their back because now, you know, the neighborhood is changing and now they don't want you. They make reports against you even if you didn't do anything. And I saw that because they didn't trust. It's a pity, racism is really ugly just because
Horrible, not ugly, horrible.
my the if you're white and teachers and it's not too it doesn't happen with all the parents, all the white parents. I don't want to generalize, but it happened a lot and I saw it. They didn't want to have even when they were gentrifying a Latino neighborhood, they didn't want to have teachers of color. They didn't say it exactly like that, but they maneuvered like that.
Yeah.
And they made the life of the teachers crazy. They wanted to have meetings every day with them after class because they wanted to check how they were teaching or not. It's um, it was awful, and I think that those things still happen. I don't think that it happens in the same level as before. I would like, I wish to believe that, but I don't know at this point.
It's tough. Being a teacher is a tough thing, no question about it. Let's talk about something that is very important: the curriculum, relevance, and workforce preparation. Curriculum needs to be evolved, meet the changing demands of labor and students' equity. So when we talk about curriculum, in how important that is to parents, are they familiar with the curriculum in the system that the students or the are going to school for? So let's talk a little bit about the curriculum.
Well, the curriculum is a big thing, uh, and complex thing.
Very
You know,
complex at times. Very complex.
parents that work all day, they are hoping that the teachers that are teaching their children
Carried away.
understand that very well, and that they are going to teach their children properly, and that that curriculum works. Parents react mostly in general when their child is not doing well in school. When the grades come and they say, well, maybe she's good in social science, maybe in social studies, but she's not good in math. That was my case when I was little. So how can we help with this? And usually, and I think that now schools have after school programs in which they can deal with those things, in which the student can stay and basically, have a refresher on what they learned before. I wish I had those things when I was in school, because I never did
Those
well
are
in
different
math.
times.
Those were different times. Uh, but I think that those things are happening depending on the budget of that specific school system, school district. And it should be equitative. But I don't know uh, how those things are moved inside the school once the principal is in charge of the money. But after school programs are extremely important, because the children stay in school, they have a time to relax, and also whatever deficiencies they may have can be attacked during that time by the teachers. Like, okay, you don't have to go home to do the homework. We can do the homework here.
We'll work it out with you. We'll work with
We
you.
work it out with you, and then we send a note. We send note to your parents. Okay, can you please work on this? Pay attention to this. Pay attention to that. I think that that's the way it's done. I hope,
Yes, it is.
uh, because it's given when you are teaching. And I teach at Columbia and at NYU. These are adults that I'm teaching. I teach
Sure.
master degree level, and my students don't need their parents. Okay, they know what to do, but when they got there to at that level, is because there was a process since they were young in which they had a discipline. Their own discipline was developed in them so they could do the work themselves. And if they couldn't do it, they had around them a network that could help them. So they
Support.
could get
Support.
to that. Exactly. But that support has to be systematic. It cannot be guessing, you know, it has to be there. So I was a bad student, awful student, but I never gave up. And then I found systems later in
To help you.
college in which that that helped me. My friends today, they cannot believe that I'm a lawyer and I'm a social worker with a master's degree and I teach at NYU and I teach at Columbia. They cannot believe it. I cannot believe it.
Well, there's a
But
combination of things. Combination of things. You
but
had parents who push you to. You had
no, I
parents
had
who
a
were
mother.
demanding. A
I
mother.
come from from a single mother, which is another issue. You know, the education cannot be analyzed by itself alone, separate from society. Everything in education is a reflection of what's happening there, from the
Yes.
teachers and from the students to the teacher. Even the even the teachers learn from the students because it's a reflection. Because you can have a teacher that lives in a very comfortable neighborhood and goes to a bad neighborhood to teach, but then she learns from that neighborhood,
No
and
question
the
about it.
students learn from it from like the vocabulary,
No question.
like how to express themselves. Because there is a teacher that had all that education, and now you're listening a teacher that sounds different from the rest of the neighborhoods. It's a give and take, but there has to be some harmony
Yes.
that has to be available, not restrictive. There has to be some harmony that is available to student and teacher for that harmony to develop. And it's very difficult for a teacher to develop it in a classroom with 20, 25 students. You are alone, and each one of them have their own individual needs.
It ain't
So
easy.
the after school is the one that pick on those pieces in which you can have a more individualized attention. And what you have is these great minds that were always there
And they pick up the
can
pieces.
can develop. My issue was dyslexia. You know who diagnosed me with dyslexia?
The teacher.
Me. I
Wow. Okay.
realized that I had dyslexia
Okay. Okay.
when one day I realized that you know that I didn't understand things, and I thought that I was dumb. But it's because I had difficulty writing and I had difficulty
Reading.
reading. That doesn't mean that you are not smart. That means that there was something that the school needed to detect that the school didn't detect.
And they
Okay?
were able to
After,
turn it around.
yeah, and sometimes the after school. You have a good teacher in the after school that said, you know, I'm going to come early. They don't get paid for that.
They help you.
I'm going to come a little bit early. I'm going to talk to that teacher about this student because I think that this student is dyslexic or he has some other problem. And then you can put them in special education, which the stigma of special education is also another problem. Sometimes we
Yes.
shouldn't even call
Can
it.
be. Yes, it can be.
We shouldn't even call it special education. We should call it education, continuation of the education. You know, that in which, okay, we're going to be paying attention. Now the teacher knows what I know. She's going to be paying attention to that. And then we're going to have a specialist that is going to go to after school
A support.
or and we're going to talk to the parents to see how the parents can do this homework with the students. If they can, sometimes the parents are too tired. Believe me, I know parents sometimes are too tired to do it correctly. So it's up to the school. But these after school programs are extremely important. Now, you have a smart kid and you want to put that kid in charter school, but that smart kid has dyslexia. And you know that has dyslexia. So you think that that student is not good. Charter schools, they're not going to take those students.
They
You
don't
know?
have the mechanism and the quality that the system has. It is
Yeah.
separate from it.
They may identify them with dyslexia in these charter schools, but knowing that that they have dyslexia, they don't bring them in.
No, they don't.
They put a lot of
Well,
excuses.
right. Let's take one thing. We have approximately 5 minutes, and I'm going to throw one that's very big to you. How are students with disabilities being supported in New York City school system? Children with
I
disabilities.
look. It will be unfair to of me to say that because I'm not uh, involved as I used to.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think that there is a system inside the Department of Education in New York City that deals with
Okay.
disabilities, and I think
Mhm.
that they have a lot of people who are very well educated on those aspects of education and
Disability.
disabilities. The thing to me is always the continuation of those services that sometimes they start and for some reason they stop. The summer comes. Sometimes the parents have to move to another district in which they don't have the resources that they need, and then what the progress that the students was doing, it cannot continue doing it because they don't have a school that really provides for that. Uh, so I think that I don't know, but I'm sure that they must have a department that
They
deals with
do.
disabilities.
They
But
do.
the issue to me is the continuation. That shouldn't be a break. When a student is in one of those programs, it shouldn't be a break, even if the student has to move, that there has to be a continuation. That wherever they move, wherever they go, there is going to be a program that deals with those issues too. Because then, and I think that that has to be systematic. It cannot be an afterthought. It cannot be something special that we're going to do here. It has to be as important as keeping Department of Education and a school system throughout the city. That should be a must, like mathematics, like science, like any other course. And I don't think, based on what I have heard, I don't think that they give the same importance as the other subjects that are being taught.
Well, Jaime, let me just say one thing to you. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. I want to take the opportunity on behalf of the family of the Grapevine to thank you so much uh, to talk about such a sensitive but extremely important situation, which is education. It also bring me and brighten me to see when you started what you went through, but you were able to get the help. You took it to another stage, and today you are one of the best attorneys and also a teacher in the school system at Columbia University and at New York City's College. I don't have words to thank you for being my special guest and bringing out all these important things that I'm sure our viewing audience is watching and it's getting in here. It's a
I don't
must.
practice law, so I'm not one of the best attorneys. I just have the title.
But
I
you're
just
a
have
teacher.
the
You're a you're a teacher, so
yeah,
that's
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I love it,
Okay.
and I love teaching. Yes.
Good. All right. So we're definitely going to be in touch for a part two down the road. And again, thank you so much for being our special guest and touching on all these important things. Very important to our public. Jaime, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for being my special guest in this program, talking about the educational system of New York, the pros and cons. And you touch a lot and very, very important things in that I think today anyone watching this program will get a big education about the educational system and what have you. I don't have words to thank you for being my special guest, and I hope to have you back on the Grapevine real soon. And again, this is Wallingford Lee saying good night for the International Grapevine. See you next week at the same time, at the same place. Good night.